Hi, my name is Tochi. I am trying to figure life out by the process of documenting it, and today I just have a thought that I want to share because it's been on my mind and I want to know what you guys think. Hear me out. I think that vegans are master manipulators. I know that might rub some people wrong, okay? But just hear me out, okay? Maybe manipulator is a strong word, okay? But hear me out. Milk is a product that comes out of the breast of a mammal, okay? So if we're making milk out of almonds, it's just not milk, you know? Like, I think that vegan advertisements, like, I understand why they utilize regular products to try and push their things, but these aren't chicken nuggets. They're not. They're breaded mushrooms, and that's just what we need to call them. Like, just call them that. We don't need to start trying to cater to the non-vegans palate or make life easier for those who are transitioning into veganism by naming things what they're not. Or meatless burger. A burger is a food consisting of fillings, usually a patty of ground meat, typically beef. I guess you can call mushed together vegetables a burger. Also, let me just say, I was vegan for about half a year. The only reason why I stopped that journey is because I got really sick and ended up in the ER and lost so much weight. I didn't do it properly. So this is not me bashing veganism. I actually fully support the movement, and I think that people have different reasons behind their choice to be vegan. My why wasn't strong enough to keep me going, you know? I also think that vegans are manipulators, or, you know, manipulators without necessarily intending to be. This is specifically for those vegans that say, like, oh, being vegan, like, you're helping the environment and and all that jazz. The thing about that, though, is that being vegan doesn't inherently make you ethical. And I think there's this understanding or this belief that being vegan makes you a more ethical person, you're doing better for the world. But the vegan industry, one, has also turned into its own type of monster. And the issue with meats in the West particularly is the mass production and the unethical practices that go with producing this mass meat. But in a lot of, what do I say, like, indigenous and non-Western cultures, the relationship that people have with meat and with animals is a lot more sacred and revered. And there are prayers that may go into it depending on the culture you're from or the religion that you are. There's just a whole process that goes into interacting with meats and animals that doesn't exist with mass production. And those ways, in my opinion, are ethical. There are ethical ways to consume meat, and there are also non-ethical ways to be vegan, you know? So I don't think being vegan inevitably makes you a good person. So that whole, like, push, I don't know, I think it's very, like, rooted in Western understandings of how life works or doesn't work. Another reason why I think vegans are, I shouldn't say vegans are manipulative, I should say veganism as an industry, as a westernized industry, is manipulative or exploitative, whatever. Especially when it comes to pushing veganism for health, because there are a lot of unhealthy vegans. Veganism doesn't inherently mean you will be healthy. The same way eating meat or animal products doesn't inherently mean you are unhealthy. There is someone that I follow on Instagram whose opinions I really respect and appreciate, and they brought this up the other day, and I was just thinking, you know what, that's true. This belief that veganism inherently makes you a good person or a more ethical person in the way that you consume food is false. And it's dangerous to push that narrative because, as I said, like, it almost dismisses the folks who engage and interact with meat and animals in a very ethical way. So, I don't know if you know this. Okay, so I live in New York City. Oh. And there are a lot of halal carts all over the city. And the reason why halal carts exist throughout the city is because at some point in time, I want to say the 80s, don't quote me, there was an influx of immigrants that were taking on jobs as taxi drivers. And these taxi drivers were predominantly Muslim. And Muslims only eat halal meats. Well, let me not say all Muslims. Islam calls for the eating of halal meats. So these taxi drivers didn't have a lot of places that they could eat around New York City. So I don't know if you know the halal guys. They're like a very well-known halal eatery spot in New York City, but they were the first halal cart to exist, and that is where taxi drivers in New York would go and get their food. And then of course it spread, like a bunch of halal carts opened up, not just by the halal guys, like different companies, different individuals opened up halal carts to cater to this demographic of people. And to me, that is an example of ethical, well, I know it's religious, but if you look up the details on what goes into meats being halal, like that, in my opinion, ties very much so into ethical consumption of animals. And so you have these immigrants who have come, who want to eat food, who are choosing halal meat, not only because of religious purposes, but I also think about it being an ethical way to consume meats within the West that's not necessarily ethical in the way that they consume meat. So you can be an ethical You can be an ethical meat eater within the context of mass meat production as good as well as you can. You know what I mean? Another reason why I think veganism is manipulative. So of course, when you're changing diets, like if you're not a vegan and you're shifting into a vegan diet, you should do your research. However, I do think that the way veganism is advertised makes it seem as though being vegan it's just like being non-vegan. But one thing that I will say is that there are a lot of nutrients that we need as humans, and if you're vegan, you need to know where those nutrients come from. So when the idea of being vegan is pushed without a real emphasis on the shift in lifestyles that goes into it, it's kind of manipulative in that I just don't always feel like the full picture is painted. Like, they give you the good parts, but for me, from my experience, the hard parts are that you want protein, you're gonna have to eat about 3 cups of beans. I'm exaggerating, but you get what I mean. And I'm used to eating maybe like 3 ounces of steak and knowing that that's what I need. But in veganism, if they say like this is a non-meat steak or something, what they're not telling you is that you're not getting the same nutrients you would get if you were to eat an actual steak. Like, I don't actually know if you're necessarily even getting nutrients for some vegan products, because the emphasis is on making this taste like meat or taste like chicken or taste like whatever animal protein, and then the priority of the nutrients is just gone. Anyway, those are my quick thoughts on why I think veganism is manipulative. And this is specific to the vegan industry that pushes veganism in a very commercial way. Like, I know there are layers to veganism. I know that there are layers to everything. So no, I'm not saying all vegans are manipulative. Everyone has the capacity to be manipulative, whether you're vegan or not. These are just thoughts I'm having in these moments. That's not to say, though, that I wouldn't try to be plant-based. I think generally I do like the idea of a plant-based lifestyle, but it's also like there are different types of vegans, right? Like, there's the raw vegans that don't eat like cooked food. I think that's what being a raw vegan means. I'm not really sure. When I think of being a vegan for myself, I just don't see it existing in the way I want it to exist in the West. Because even if I were to just eat fruits and vegetables, the amount of pesticides and such that are used on fruits and vegetables, bro, when I first moved to America, I remember the first time that I saw an apple not go bad after a week. Like, this apple survived at least a month, and all it did was shrivel up, but it didn't go bad. And that was concerning for me, because why is this apple not going bad? Like, that's weird to me. So it's like, you can choose to be vegan or plant-based, but even the vegetables and fruits you're consuming, I don't know what they do to them, but they're not giving healthy or the healthiest. They're giving, our priority was shelf life, and that means that we use products that might not necessarily be good for you in the long run, you know? I'm just allowing my thoughts to go off the dome. Like, I have no particular trajectory of how my thoughts are coming out of my mouth right now. I do like the idea of being plant-based and like trying to live a more plant-based lifestyle without the pressure of you cannot eat animal products, even though I think that being plant-based is a really good transition from someone who consumes everything to being vegan. I think having a plant-based middle ground as you transition into being vegan, I think that's a super good idea. I also think that being plant-based is nice because it helps you think more about what you're consuming. When I was vegan, I definitely recognized how much more conscious and intentional I was about the food that I was eating. And when I stopped being vegan, that just kind of went out the window. And I do miss being that conscious of what I'm eating and that particular about what's going in my body. I know I can still be that way as a non-vegan. I just think that because everything's so available, it's not at the top of my mind. But when I go out, when I was vegan, I would have to look like, do you have vegan options, or look for a way to make the menu work for my diet. So I do miss being that intentional. When I was vegan, honestly, I felt like really good about myself. Like, oh yeah, the choices I'm making are better for the world and they're better for my body, and my body is a temple and this is how she should be treated, yada 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 yada. Then I ended up in the ER and I was like, give this baby some chicken because she is lacking in protein. I have a video on that whole story, so if you're interested in that, go click on that, find that video. I might put it up here somewhere. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Please share yours. As always, love having conversation and discussion. I am also open to my perspective changing and shifting. You know, I love to hear other people's ideas. So if that's you, put it down in the comments and we'll have a little conversation. Okay, bye for now.